Hey, what's up, everybody? Tim Albrecht here, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist Podcast, where we feature questions from you, the YFP community, to be answered by one of our very own fee-only certified financial planners. Please note this podcast is intended for educational purposes and should not be considered financial or investment advice, as we do not know all the variables to one's personal situation when answering a question. Before we jump into today's question, a shout out to our extraordinary YFP financial planning team that makes this segment possible. Your Financial Pharmacist offers fee-only comprehensive financial planning services that are customized to the pharmacy professional. So whether you want to pay off your student loans, make the right investment decisions, or simply build a solid financial plan, we'll help get your income working for you rather than the other way around. You can learn more by visiting yfpplanning.com. Again, that's yfpplanning.com. Okay, this week's question comes from Sierra in Portland, Oregon.
Hello, this is Sierra from Portland, Oregon. I was wondering about contributing to both a traditional and a Roth IRA. Specifically, I'm employed by the VA, so I have the option to contribute to both types through the TSP. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sierra, for submitting your question to be featured on this week's Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist Podcast. Tim Baker, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so before I answer the question, I just want to back up just a touch, Sarah, on your question. So the question had kind of two different types of accounts that were mentioned. You mentioned the IRA, like the traditional and the Roth IRA, and then also the TSP. So just to break those down, and sometimes people use the IRA and a 401k or a TSP interchangeably. So I just want to make sure that we understand kind of the nuance there. So the IRA, or the individual retirement account, this is the account that you set up pretty much on your own or with the help of an advisor, so not through the employer. And you can do this through, Schwab, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, Vanguard, etc. And you have the option to basically do a pre-tax account, which is a traditional IRA, or a Roth IRA, which is an after-tax account. So the other option here is the, what is provided through your employer, the VA, the TSP, or the Thrift Savings Plan. So this is set up by the VA, and you basically defer part of your paycheck into that. And you also have the option to put it into a pre-tax bucket, so a traditional TSP, or an after-tax bucket, a Roth TSP. So just those are the kind of the big differences that I just want to kind of set from the get-go. Now, the question of, should I put money, whether it's an IRA or a TSP, into pre-tax traditional or after-tax Roth? It's a complicated question. It depends. I got to make sure I got to say that. Now, I think for a lot of people, a lot of young people, they always hear Roth. The idea is that most people think if you pay the taxes now, the taxes will be higher in the future, your earnings will be higher. That makes a lot of sense. You live in Oregon, which has a state income tax, which may or may not, factor into your decision. But there are lots of decisions, or lots of factors that go into this. One of them is, what is your student loan strategy? So if you're looking at a forgiveness strategy, which a lot of people in the VA are, I often say you should be allergic to, Roths for the most part, for the next 10 years, or as long as you're seeking forgiveness. So that comes into play. For a lot of us, the TSP, or the 401k, or the 403b Roth option is really one of the only options, or the traditional option is the only option that we have to get a deduction. So for a lot of people, the IRA, the traditional IRA, using 2021 numbers, if you make more than $66,000 to $76,000, it phases out over that $10,000 range. You can't put a deductible IRA contribution, or you can't make a deduction on your taxes. So the only way to kind of lower your AGI is to put it into a traditional account, through your employer, which you can do up to $19,500 per year, and that's a 2021 number as well. So from a traditional standpoint, or from a shelter in some current income, that's really the only way to do it. But a lot of people do look at that Roth as, hey, I'll pay the taxes now. It's kind of a known quantity. If you look at the Trump tax code, the taxes might be a little bit lower compared to what we might see in the future. So they just basically pay it now. Now, the important thing to remember on this is, if you pay the taxes now, it goes into that account, that Roth TSP or that Roth IRA, and it grows tax-free. And then when you distribute that in retirement, you don't, basically you don't pay any taxes coming out. With the pre-tax accounts, remember, you get a deduction going in, it grows tax-free, but when that money comes out in retirement, you then pay the taxes. So I always say to clients, if you have $1 million in a Roth TSP or a Roth IRA, that $1 million is yours. But if you have $1 million in a traditional TSP or a traditional IRA, you still have to pay Uncle Sam, his portion of that. So if that's 25%, you have $750,000, and Uncle Sam has $250,000. So there's lots of nuance here. I kind of, as a general rule of thumb, say I kind of like a little bit in column A and a little bit of column B. Meaning I like a little bit in, the Roth after-tax bucket and then a little bit in the pre-tax bucket, the traditional. So just because there's just so much, that's kind of unknown. One of the big things I often say is, like, if you live in Oregon, but you know that you're going to retire to Texas or Florida where there's no state income tax, maybe you don't pay the tax now, or, put it into a Roth now. Maybe you just wait until you go to those states that don't have state income tax. But the other disadvantage is that you don't know, there could be a state income tax in the future. So just lots of kind of what ifs. So to me, the best strategy, if you don't really know, is to kind of thread the needle and kind of split the difference between a little bit in pre-tax and a little bit in after-tax. So Sierra, it's a great question. It's a question that I get a lot, and per usual, it depends. But there's a lot of factors, whether it's your income, your student loan strategy, kind of the state that you live in, et cetera, that really factors into this overall decision.
Yeah, great overview, Tim, of some of the nuances there. And I would point our listeners back to episodes 72 through 76. Way back when, over a couple of years ago, we did a whole series on investing for those that want to learn more about this. And I think what you just said, and really we're just scratching the surface, Tim, really highlights to me the importance of making investing decisions, looking at your investing options in the context of everything else in your financial plan, and the value that financial planning can have in doing that, as well as considering some of the tax implications in those conversations that are important in making those decisions. So I would encourage our listeners, anytime you hear, whether it's this episode or even just any other episode only talking about investing, really taking a pause before you make any decisions, hopefully consulting a financial planner like Tim, or one on our team, or someone else to really help you navigate that decision and look how it fits in as a piece of the rest of the puzzle for one to consider. Lots to consider, without question.
Absolutely. And I think it's something, like you said, Tim, that this is something that we should be looking at really every year, and determining, what our tax strategy is, and plugging that into the investment strategy, going forward.
Tim, since we're publishing this here at the end of 2020, about to roll the calendar into 2021, if I heard you correctly, we're not expecting any changes in contribution limits for the 401k, for the 403b. That's to remain at 19.5, as well as the IRA at 6,000. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. I mean, they've made some different changes with like the HSA and a few other numbers, but for the most part, it stays pat.
Okay, and remind us as well, for folks that are listening to this saying, you know what, I'm not going to be able to max this out or contribute as much as I had hoped in 2020, but perhaps I might be able to do some in early 2021. Is it a hard stop at the end of the calendar year, or what flexibility does one have to make these 2020 contributions?
Yeah, for retirement plans, usually it's more of a hard stop at the end of the year, and every plan is going to be different. But for the IRAs, you have up into basically April 15th, the tax filing deadline, or when you file your taxes. Mm-hmm. So if you file your taxes on the 15th, you basically have the first quarter and change to max out your 2020 bucket. So I like, there's some clients that we work with that just cut a check and say, hey, I'm maxing out, the IRA right up front, or, some people do it kind of on a monthly basis. So they put the $500 per month and go that route. So, or they do kind of a combination of the two. They might do, hey, I can spare, $300 per month, and then at the end of the year, I'll write a check, if there's money there to max it out. But you should really max out the 2020 bucket before you look at the 2021 bucket.
Great stuff, Tim. And thank you, Sierra, for submitting your question to be featured on the show. Gave us an opportunity to talk about this in a little bit more detail, so we appreciate it. As a small thank you to Sierra for submitting her question, we're going to be sending her a super comfy YFP t-shirt. And to those listening, if you'd like to have your question featured on an upcoming episode, please go to yourfinancialpharmacist.com/ask YFP, or shoot us an email at info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com. Have a great rest of your day.